There's so many ways that we can get to be a good leader. There's a lot of different paths that we can take. But over my 26 years of being in the military and starting my own business, I've come up with a few checkpoints in order to try to get there. And it starts with knowing yourself, then knowing your team, and then building trust with your team. Okay, so we'll start with that, know yourself. Now, we just talked about the Delphic Maxims. Now, I call this my 3 Bs. And the first one is to be self-aware. I highly encourage you to go out and have one of the personality tests. Myers-Briggs, Clifton Strengths, DISC assessments, 360s. Be self-aware. Now, I'm not talking about going on Facebook and going to one of those. If you're going to be a potato, what kind of potato would you be? That's not what I'm talking about. And I will tell you that I was the biggest skeptic out there when it came to those tests. I was like, I am an individual. I have my own nuances. There is no way that this test is going to tell me anything about who I am. And man, was I wrong. Absolutely wrong. I knew my strengths, had a pretty good idea what they were. And my weaknesses, I had some ideas as well. But one of the most important things that it told me was that, you know what? This is how you are perceived by others, especially when you're under stress. They take those traits and kind of turn it back around on you so that you see what others see in you, not necessarily what you see in yourself. And it brings it to the forefront of your conscience. I now know that, yeah, I'm a pretty terrible delegator. And it brought that out. It's like, you know what? This is something that I need to be better at. So be self-aware. Go take one of those tests. You'll actually be surprised at how accurate they are. Next is to be proficient. As the leader or the manager, you need to be proficient. This doesn't mean that you have to know everything, but you have to know the right people to go ask. I encourage each of you, read an article every week, either personal or professional, because as a leader, people look to you. Read, learn, continual learning. Even going to conferences like this is going to help you be more proficient in both your personal and your professional life. And last, you have to be yourself. Now, I'll tell you a story about my absolute epic failure the first time I tried to lead people. I was a young officer and I was put in charge of a group of 18 people. And we have evaluations that we have to do every year. And these evaluations are really important because those pieces of paper, they go up for a board for hopefully people to get to the next level so that they can get promoted. Now I bring this stack of paper in and I'm, going into my boss's office and I'm so excited and I put it down on his desk and he takes out his red pen and he absolutely just crushes it. I mean, it looks like a bloody massacre. I mean, there's basically ink is dripping off the sides of this. I mean, he just tears it up and then he tears into me. He's like, gotta go do this better, and demeans me. And it's like, go do better. And I was like, okay. So I go back into my team and, give them the bloody stack of all these evaluations and they make the changes and I'm feeling pretty proud. So I take him back to my office and, give them to him and he takes out his red pen again. And I mean, he just absolutely just scratches all over it and demeans me and calls me names and, you need to go do better. Well, at this point, I'm thinking, well, I probably should try that whole leadership thing. And so I started to look around at my bosses and who they were, and they were all yellers. And so I thought, oh, well, I guess that's how you lead people is you yell at them to make them do what you want to do. Okay, I got this. So I take the stack of papers back into my office and I have my 18 people around me and I slam it down on the desk and I tell them that they're worthless. I tell them that they shouldn't even be in the US Navy. How dare they give me something like this and make me embarrassed in front of my boss? You have to do better. I don't care how late you stay up tonight. You are going to get these done. Today I'm still embarrassed about that. That's not how you lead people. But I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And that's what I did. And I went home that night and I was thinking, you know what? I don't think I can be in the military if this is how I'm supposed to lead people. Luckily, I got a mentor later that helped me be a better leader. And you know what? My team, they saw right through that. They knew that that wasn't the leader that I really was, and that I was trying to be something that I wasn't. So you have to be yourself. Otherwise, you're going to feel it in that pit of your heart that is like, this isn't right. And you're going to be uncomfortable and you're not going to be authentic. You're not going to be a genuine leader. So you have to start with just being yourself. So we talked about knowing ourselves and knowing our team. That's our next piece. So I want to introduce you to Rudy. Now, Rudy was the leader of an 800-person corporation that I used to work for. And for those who know anything about geotechnical earthquake engineering, you will know that he is the absolute rock star of geotechnical earthquake engineering. And so he comes to my office one day and he says, hey, Jen, it's great to meet you. I'm so glad you're in the company. And I'm like, oh, I'm so excited because it's Rudy. And like, Rudy's here in my office. And so we started talking and he asked me about the projects I'm on and just asked me some personal questions. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. There's 800 people in the company and Rudy came to talk to me. And so Rudy leaves and he goes back to Atlanta and I'm working in the Oakland office, and about 8 or 9 months go by. And then Rudy comes back out to Oakland for a meeting and he's like, hey, Jen, how are you doing? I'm like, oh my God, it's Rudy, being a fangirl. And he comes in my office and he's like, hey, how was that vacation that you took with your husband, Sean? And I'm like, oh, I don't even remember the vacation that I took with him. I'm like, oh yeah, I did take a vacation. I'm like, he remembers I had a vacation with my husband and he remembers my husband's name. And then he starts to talk about the project that I was working on. And he's like, that's really great stuff. You need to get that information out. You need to get that in a journal paper. I'm going to go talk to your boss. We're going to make sure that your information gets out there. I'm like, wow, thanks, Rudy. Really appreciate that. And I was like, I'm just blown away. How does Rudy remember all this? There's 800 people in the company. Actually, there's almost 900 people at that point. And so I go in the break room and I was talking to a colleague and I'm like, man, you will not believe what just happened. Rudy came into the office and he was telling me like all these things. And I'm like, how does he remember this? And my colleague says, well, he's got a trick. I'm like, well, what's that? He says he takes a note card at the end of each day and he writes down what he talks about with people. It's like, wow. And he keeps a little Oakland stack. And so whenever he has to fly out to Oakland, he grabs his stack and he takes the rubber band off. And then on the plane, he just starts looking through all of the different cards so that he can remember, what each person did. And I asked Rudy about that. I said, Rudy, this is just amazing that you do this. And he told me, you know what? It's not a gimmick. He's like, I'm afraid that my memory would start to fail me. And so I write this down. And he said, there's a reason why I do this. And I want you to take a minute and read this. This is pretty powerful. Family. Commitment. Isn't this a type of boss that we would like to have, that cares that much about us, that he wants to know every single person in the company and feels like that's part of a family? Now, Rudy had his note cards, but I want you to think of all of the other avenues that you can also get to know your team. Maybe it's just something on your phone. Maybe it's the notes. Maybe it's on your computer. There are ways that you can get to know your team. Maybe it is the note cards. But if Rudy can do it for a company of, well, we almost got up to 1,200 people before I left. You can do it too. So knowing your team. We always talk about strengths. Know the strengths of your team. That's like the easy button. But we really also need to think about what are the weaknesses of the team. And you know what? Sometimes weaknesses, they're really not all that. Like there might be somebody who's really great at analytics and somebody who's really bad at reports, because that's me. And I realized like, this is my weakness. And my boss realized, you know what, Jen, she is not good at reports. And he could have said, you know what, Jen will never write another report again. It's not worth it. Like she's horrible and somebody else is going to do it. But he didn't. He said, hey, you know what? You're pretty terrible at report writing. Do you want to be better? And I said, yes. And so he took time and he mentored me. And okay, I'm still not the greatest report writer, but I'm definitely not the worst. And so what he's done is taken that weakness and turned it around so that it's more of a strength. And that's what we need to do as leaders. We need to understand the weaknesses of our team members and ask them, would you like to turn this into a strength? Because it's going to make your entire team better. But more important than strengths and weaknesses, do you know their goals? Do you know their aspirations? Are they happy where they are? Or do they maybe want to be president of the company someday? It's our job to understand that and give them the tools and the resources that they need in order to get to their goals. And if you think, wow, that's actually pretty complicated. This is the motto of the US Navy Seabees. This is what I'm part of. And this is our slogan. And this is what I keep thinking about when I'm like, wow, that's so overwhelming. But just remember, the difficult we do immediately. The impossible, it just takes a bit longer. So now let's talk about building that trust. Everybody says that trust is a two-way street, but I would say that as a leader, you need to be on the on-ramp first. You have to show trust in order to earn it. It seems pretty simple, but how do you get there? And so I'm going to ask you, have you been in a trusting business relationship? And so the question is then, how did that make you feel? And so tell me, how did it feel to be in a trusting business relationship? Is there anybody still there? Maybe it's just taking a little time. There we go, empowered. Awesome, confident, wanted. Happy that you were heard and that you were valued. Confident and appreciated. It looks like valued is one of those that really seems to resonate with a lot of people. So this is what over the last several conferences that I've come up with. And take a look at this. Appreciated, safe, empowered. That's how we want our employees to feel when they come to work. And so the same time is, have you been in a situation where you have not been trusted? And how did that make you feel? Angry. Remember our 80-20. Why are people leaving? You know, this is a big portion of it. And while you're putting this in, I want to tell you that the Harvard Business Review recently did a study and asked employees if they trusted their boss. 52% said that they would rather trust a complete stranger than their own boss. That's a lot. So think about it. If you have two direct reports, one of them might not trust you. We have to work on that. We have to work on trusting our personnel, because this is what it feels like: overworked, upset, angry, worthless, that they wanted to leave. And so this is an aggregation of those as well. Undervalued, frustrated. These are how people feel when they're not trusted. That's why trust is so important. So I'm going to give you my 3 tips. Ask questions. It's okay to be vulnerable. If you don't know something, go and ask that person, because really, they're probably going to be excited to tell you all about what they do if you don't understand. Think about having a lunch and learn. Take them out. Sit down. Ask them questions. Do you know their spouse? Do they have children, dogs, cats? What's their favorite sports team? Asking these questions are going to start to open the door for building that trust. Communicate, often and with transparency. As leaders, we often know a lot about what's going on in the company. And if we're holding that all inside of us, that doesn't build trust. There are ways to give people bad news about what's going on in our industry, and they will appreciate it as opposed to finding out that you've known about it for 6 months. Last, we have to listen, actively listen. When you're asking these questions and you're communicating, make sure that you are also listening and that you're acting on what people are telling you. Those are the items that are going to build trust. So we're going to skip over this piece. I know it's Little Green Army Men. You can always find me and I will tell you all about what we're going through right now. But I realize that we're getting short on time. So building trust in that team, because we want to have them feel that they are independent and that they are innovative. If we trust them enough to give them the authority and the responsibility to do their job, they're going to want to stay. They're going to feel valued and they're going to feel trusted